In order to understand where sociology came from and what it really means, we have to understand the broader history from which it emerged. So human societies have been changing throughout our existence, basically. We all started out, like many other animals, hunting and gathering our food as we went along. Then at some point, people started to settle, they started to plant seeds, and it started around 15,000 years ago, but it happened at various times in various places all over the world. People settled, started growing their own food, and much more recently, just in the last few hundred years, another major revolution took place, the Industrial Revolution, where people started to use machines to do a lot of their work for them, and that caused even greater changes in some ways, which we'll talk about. But first, hunting and gathering, you're living with your family, you're following the food. You can pretty much gather as much food as you need to survive. You'll make a few things that you need along the way, some basic tools and clothing and shelter. But you're only pretty much carrying what you really need, and life and society and people are roughly equal. Then, as we start to settle, we can grow grain that we can store. Some people can start to do things besides growing food and dealing with food, so they can create other things, and materially life gets a little bit more complicated. And some people are able to get more luxurious goods and get more things than other people, and people started to trade. So we needed a way of tracking trade, so writing developed. And along with lots and lots of trade records, we have writings of people thinking about their world, what it meant. So what was life like in agricultural societies? What is it like in agricultural societies today? Because, by the way, agricultural and hunting-gathering societies still exist, but the work that most people were doing was mostly farming. And farming was going to be happening in the countryside. So most people are living in sparsely populated areas. And in that sense, then, most of the people that you know are going to be related to you, family and close friends and neighbors. You may not like everyone, but most of the people you interact with are people that you know quite well. Now, within that world, if most people are farming, and even for those people who aren't farming, your education is coming largely from your parents. Some elites had a more formal education, but for the most part, people get everything they need to know from their parents, because you're largely living a similar life as your parents. Society changes very slowly. You can count on the seasons to always cycle through regularly, and as long as you plant at the right time and manipulate the environment in the right way, you can pretty reliably have food keep coming, and you can count on continued survival. Philosophers are starting to think about their world, and what they see is that indeed life moves in these regular cycles, and within that setting, and this is Aristotle in Greece, he says people seem to be born into their proper place. So, people aren't equal in every way, but that's all right, because the people who are good at working are working. And of course that did make sense. If you're a farmer, you can learn everything you need to know from your parents, and you've grown up seeing that work done. If you're an aristocrat, a leader, or an academic, you're probably growing up with people who are like that, and you can learn from them. In another part of the world, around the same time, Confucius is saying something very similar. He says you have to follow tradition and respect authority, and that's the way to create a harmonious society. Basically, they see that there's just these universal laws, these continual cycles that you can count on, and as long as you keep doing things the same way, you can count on continuing to survive. But new scientific ideas are happening all along the way, and there's a certain breaking point where the Industrial Revolution begins, and machines start to make work much faster and easier. People also realize that they don't have to use muscle power, either human or animal, to run those machines and to get things done. They can use other aspects of the natural world, water, wind, coal, steam, and they start to realize even that there are better ways of producing things, even with people. So you put people in a factory and give them each a specialized job. They can work in an assembly line and pump out goods much faster than they could before. And these innovations all kind of build on top of each other. And so one machine allows you to do things a new way, and that allows you to then make a new machine. You've got more time, you've got more energy to develop and create things in the world. So within this setting, if you want to run a factory, if you want to have a large, expensive piece of machinery, you have to have a lot of people gathered in one place. So people are largely living in cities, more and more. And recently, just in the last 50 years or so, over half the world's population has been living in cities for the first time in human history. And not everyone is farming anymore. In fact, once we get to the age of gas-powered tractors, very few people in the US and other industrial countries are spending their time farming. So they're doing other kinds of work. Many people are working in factories. And in that case, living in the city, working in a factory, you can't count on just working with people you know anymore. You're working with often strangers, and you're interacting on a daily basis as you go through life with many, many people, and many of them you don't know very well. In that setting, as things change much faster, your parents can't teach you everything you need to know anymore. So the education system begins. And as more people are educated, more people are able to then develop new technologies, and again, change just happens faster and faster. So in this world, it makes sense to move beyond how things have always been, to move beyond tradition. People start to think about using evidence, using the basics of the scientific method to continue to progress and innovate. So how does society adapt to so much change, moving from these small societies in the country where you know pretty much everyone, you can count on doing what your parents have done, to a whole bunch of strangers packed into one place, often people from very different parts of the world and very different backgrounds? How does society adapt to that change?